Mercy. The weather was getting colder. Winter was coming. The cool wind was blowing in through my collar, which I was trying to close tightly, and chilling me. That was the first day I saw her. I had gotten off the bus and was walking towards my house. These were the days when my financial problems were getting worse. With troubles dancing in my mind, I didn't even pay much attention to him when I saw him from a distance. How could I have known that we would meet again in the days to come? For a short while, we exchanged glances. Then, he went his way and I went mine. I accelerated my steps to get from the cold street to my warm house as soon as possible. That day comes to my mind every time I see him in the following days. His cold wandering on the cold street and my arrival at my warm house, combined with a sense of guilt, wounds my heart, and an icy wind blows through me. Anyway, let me continue telling the story. This story, which wounds me, may affect you too, and may lead you to be more conscientious and compassionate. But don't ask me, what would you do if you went back to those days? I don't know if I would act very differently, believe me. I knew it wasn't as intelligent as a child, but that wasn't why I started to approach it emotionally. One day, when I saw it in our street with its offspring, my little son conveyed to me the sad information he had learned from the neighbors, which honestly shook me. One of its offspring had died, leaving it alone with the other. Every time I went out on the street, I would wonder, will I run into him on our street? One cold day I saw him when he came to our door. No clothes, no money. All he wanted was some food. When one of our neighbors saw me approaching him with compassion, he couldn't stand it and called out, "Mr. Ahmet, if you get him used to your door once, he will come every day." A bitter smile played on my lips. However, my mother used to say, "Don't turn away anyone who comes to your door empty, God forbid." My mother's mercy also brought an old memory to my mind. I think it was the years I went to university. While I was studying at home, the doorbell rang. It was a beggar at the door. After giving him coins, my mother asked him a few questions to find out how he was doing. When she found out that he was hungry, she came to me and asked me, "If you're not going to the match or anything, if you're at home, I'll call you home and feed the beggar at the door. If you're going, I'll prepare some bread rolls." Anyway, when the beggar entered the house, he said, "When you did your charity at the door, the good deed would stay there. You took it into the house, and the good deed and its blessing crossed the threshold and entered the house." Then he fed himself, and from the conversation he could see our good intentions. He obviously couldn't spare us and said what he thought was the right thing to say, "You let me in, but don't let anyone else in. There are thieves and murderers." This incident, which reminded me of the saying, "The roads to hell are paved with stones of goodwill," that has stuck in my mind for years, had an impact on me. I began to think, even kindness should not be blind, it is necessary to be careful. However, old habits die hard, sometimes all warnings fall short. Despite the neighbor's warning, I couldn't resist and gave it some food. It immediately called its hesitant offspring standing at a distance. Although it was clearly hungry, it couldn't eat a bite before its offspring. In the days that followed, the neighbor's warning proved to be right. He came to our door almost every day. Sometimes we would get angry, let him go to someone else for a while, but in the end we would come to our senses again. Our house in Batikant was a detached duplex. One day something happened in this house that surprised us. He barged into the house without even asking our permission, even though his clothes were not very clean, even dirty. Before we could say what was going on, he was already climbing the stairs to the top floor. The lady was upset with me, raising her voice. "This is what happens when you behave like this. From your soft face, look what he did." Since she entered the house quickly, we thought she was going to go upstairs impulsively, but when the lady started to speak in a shouting tone, she went up 4 to 5 steps and stopped. After her angry voice, he looked at me as if asking for mercy. When she saw him stop, she immediately turned to him. "Look at him. There are traces of his dirty feet on the ground. Get out quickly." He looked at me again with a last hope. I kept silent. He didn't take another step upstairs. He walked towards the exit door, his unhappiness evident in his face. As I had said, he doesn't have as much sense as a child. The lady didn't expect him to listen to her. She was surprised. No matter how much she tried not to show it, I could tell that her conscience was pricking her. The lady murmured in a sad voice. It was as if he knew this house before. Could he have lived in this house before us? Even though our perspective changed a little with this thought in our minds, that is, we tried to understand his longing for the house he had lived in before, in the end, we couldn't do much about it. After this reprimand, we couldn't even imagine that he would do the same thing again and again. A few days later, the same incident was repeated with almost the same details. When he looked at me with hope again, she said, "You see, he has realized that you are too merciful and is looking to you for help. It's your fault. I'm not going to let him into my house." Unfortunately, she was right. When he came to our door, we did not easily send him away without food, but the black humor scene happened a few more times. One day, when we didn't mind him coming into our garden, he ran into the house with our door half open, as if he was waking up, when we took a few steps towards our garden. We got angry and laughed at the same time. Afterwards, the same thing happened again with the lady's angry voice and her staying where she was. I thought I couldn't stand the next scene, namely her looking at me with hopeful eyes, so I immediately left the scene. Although a smile spread across our faces as we talked about it later, winter had come. There was nothing to smile about. On the first snow day, even though we didn't show it to my wife, we looked for them on the street. When my little boy Solly asked, I said, "There must be a place for them to stay. How can you stay outside in this cold?" But I felt uneasy inside. That day, trying to forget them, the day ended and night came. I was the only one awake in the house. It was dark, cold, and quiet outside. I kept repeating to myself what I had said to Solly: he must have a place to stay. I couldn't sleep, so I went to my computer to write a story that had been floating around in my mind for a long time. I had just pressed the start button when I heard a noise outside, quite close to the house. I was worried. Is it a burglar or a thief at this hour? So far, there had never been any disturbing or police incidents in the neighborhood such as burglaries, and the windows were always barred. But the stress of my loneliness at that moment, combined with the darkness outside, caused my heart to race. After a minute or two, desperate for courage, I approached the window, slowly opened the curtain and looked out onto the street. It was him again, slowly moving away. The night was dark, the night was cold. I don't know if he did it on purpose to prick my conscience, but as I was about to turn the corner, he stopped for a moment under the street lamp and looked at me. We locked eyes for a moment, and in that one moment, flames went through me. With his gaze that penetrated me, it was as if he was saying something. "Are you comfortable in your cozy home while I'm out in this cold?" After the brief moment we locked eyes, he put the whole burden of guilt on my shoulders, as if to say, "I have no more words." He disappeared around the corner, leaving a trail in the snow with his cold, sockless feet. The next day was Sunday. The children didn't know the reason for my sluggishness, only that I had been writing at night and was sleep-deprived. The sadness inside me was growing so much that I thought I was going to be cheerless and silent for the day, but when the lady who was looking out the window said, He's used to it. He's coming straight to our door without stopping anywhere." I jumped up excitedly and ran outside. I opened the door, and there he was again. And nothing had changed. Without mincing words, without wasting time on idle chatter, he got straight to the point and asked for food. He was looking at me again and calling out in the same way. Mayav. Lived being lived. Storytelling from a real event.
Ahmet, Unal, Cam.